Hello everyone, welcome back to another Jurassic World Evolution 2 video. This is Joey Plays and Build, where we play and build a Moros interpretus habitat. Now I got this idea from a Planet Zoo builder that made a wallaby habitat with a combination of an indoor restaurant. I kind of play around with this idea on my Red Tree Gardens with a little critter restaurant habitat, so I want to make its own exhibit with the Moros interpretus, and hopefully this kind of fledge into a new park. I was thinking about prehistoric outback all the way with the Kingdom of Asia, but I scrapped that idea, so hopefully this could be the prehistoric outback. So right now, getting the layout of the whole restaurant, and right in the middle of the restaurant is going to be the habitat for the Moros interpretus. So you see here, the layout is very interesting. I place their feeding source right next to the sitting area of the guests. So in a way, the Moros interpretus has to go into that side to eat. So it's kind of in visual, the guest could watch the Moros interpretus eating while the guest is eating. Even though the guests can't eat nor sit on the tables, it's a good visual aspect for the build. And there's the layout for the restaurant. Here's one thing we don't have in this game is windows, but using those type of wall sections does provide a little window for our guests to see the Moros interpreters eating. Sometimes there's small little gaps in between walls, so I hid them and cover them with rocks and other different type of foliage so the Moros interpreters will not cross to the other side of the restaurant. Now one thing I really love is placing planters instead of fences, because for me at least it just makes your habitat much more better and much beautiful than just having their bland and boring fences. That is just my opinion, but the fences in this game it's way too big, it's way too clunky. They're visually not appealing in my opinion. The planters, however, just makes your park and barricades much efficient. Now, originally it was going to be a small little stream across the habitat, but since the water paintbrush, even though you adjust it to small, it still makes this awkwardly weird shape. It just doesn't feel natural to me. And I couldn't try, like I try to fix it as the best way as I can, but I decided to scrap that and make two little ponds instead. So there's four different types of rocks that I use for this habitat. The Mediterranean rocks, which I'm using right now, these are mostly the more frequent that I'm using. And I use them in the back layer of the habitat. These are basically just covering some of the gaps from the walls. And since they are more in a way drier as in texture, I place them as far away from the pond as possible, indicating that these rocks have been dry for so long. Then I'm using the desert rocks just the same way as I'm using with the Mediterranean, but I'm also using the desert rocks right in the middle or right in the center of the habitat, and then the taiga and the temperate rocks right at the edge of the pool, and of course covering some of the gaps of the walls as well. So yeah, four different types of rocks that I use in placing in their different respectable places. If you guys are wondering why too many rocks, well, realistically, especially in small animals, they need places to hide, right? You see this in zoos, you hardly see the animals because they're hiding in small rocks. That's where they're comfortable with, that's where they like it. And you know, thinking about the Moros interpreters, these are small dinosaurs, they want a lot of places to hide. So realistically, that's where I have the idea of adding as much rocks in this habitat. Now, one mistake that I made building this one, and I'm halfway through finishing the Morris Interpreters, is bringing the dinosaur in first. As you could already see, the habitat is pretty completely done, but there's so many rocks, and if you have been playing this game, you know how difficult it is to bring your dinosaurs if there is so many stuff going on in the habitat. Luckily, that didn't happen here. Like all the dinosaurs has been placed here fine, but there's some occasions during my gameplay it is very hard to bring in your dinosaurs, which means that you have to take some of the foliage or decorating stuff out from your habitat just to bring in your dinosaurs. But in my advice, bring in your dinosaurs first because they have needs to be met. And for example, the Moros interpreters wanted sand, so I didn't know that. I didn't know they needed sand, but since I have the Moros interpreters in the habitat, I could place as much sand as possible. But yeah, it is an advice to put your dinosaurs before building or decorating your beautiful habitat. And just finishing up with the habitat is adding some of the decorative trees, mostly the Mediterranean and the desert. Also using some of the taiga, especially the giant big bush trees. I really like those because they covered many of the smaller gaps. And yeah, that's basically the habitat built for the Moros interpretus.